Françoise, Girard, and I'll be moderating the panel this morning. As you just heard, there's still a lot of pain and trauma. And today we can talk, and we have the privilege to be with people who have taken this on and have decided to do something about it, to rebuild their country. So it's a real privilege to have you here with us. The panel is entitled The Essential Role of Women in Post-Conflict Peace Building and Development. And you can see why this is necessary. We have here with us Chantal Kabasinga, who's been introduced before. She's the president of AVEGA and has been the president for the last 4 years. We have next to me Odette Kayirere, who's the executive secretary of AVEGA. She's been in that position for 6 months now, so quite new. They're both longtime members of AVEGA, Chantal since 1998 and Odette since the very beginning, 1995. They are both widows of the genocide. And as it turns out, they're both clinical psychologists, although Odette is also a teacher. And further away, we have the Honorable Akua, Kuenyehia, who's a judge on the International Criminal Court, and she has been on the International Criminal Court since 2003. She's the first vice president and presiding judge of the pretrial chamber number 1. She was also, I guess still is, a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Ghana, as well as a law professor at the University of Ghana. And she's a fellow member of the Women's Prize Committee for the Gruber Prize. And I know we also have in the room 3 founding members of AVEGA who now live in the United States. There's Chantal, there's Esperance, and Christine. Can you stand up, all 3 of you, so we can see you? So what I'd like to ask, and just so you know, Chantal, as you can see, my English is not 100% fluent, so we may have to turn to each other and do a bit of translation at some point to allow her to participate, but we hope that's going to work out fine. So as you heard, the organization AVEGA was established in 1995 by 50 widows in Rwanda, 50 widows of the genocide. And today it has a membership of 20,000, more than 20,000 widows, who are responsible for more than 70,000 dependent orphans. So it's quite a large concern. Still, it's 20,000 widows in a country of 11 million people. So it just gives you an idea of the proportions of the situation. But one of the things I wanted to ask Odette to tell us is, why widows? You know, why not an organization of women or an organization of men? I mean, what was the idea of widows getting together? What was the particular reason for widows in particular to want to get together in 1995?
Thank you. As you may know, in 1994, Rwanda happened a genocide against Tutsi, where tribes in Rwanda, one killed another, and now the genocide took away about over 1 million of Tutsi in Rwanda, and it left thousands widows and orphans, because the genocide was planned in the manner to kill first men, educated men, or somehow rich men, and also men in general, Tutsi, and boys, and educated women, and in general, women Tutsi. And it is why after genocide, we had a big number of genocide widows. Now it was who experienced a horrific situation where it was really a need to help them, to put together them, because they lost their children, they lost their relatives, they lost their husbands. So it was really a need to start up that organization, which can build hope in the life of those survivors women.
Well, then, can you tell us what were some of the very practical problems that the widows were facing at that time in 1995? What was their concrete situation?
During the genocide, as I said, the genocide was really planned since 1959, where they killed slowly Tutsi in Rwanda, slowly, some of them exiled in neighboring countries, and until in 1994, where they killed massively the tribe of Tutsi in Rwanda. So women who survived experienced horrific experience where they have seen kill their children in front of their eyes, or their husband, or their relatives, and they stayed alone. It is really tragic and horrific. And also, some of them have been raped, because the rape was used as a weapon also to kill and to elevate the dignity of Tutsi women. And also, those survivors' widows, their properties were destroyed. They had nothing, no food to feed the children. For those who left with the children, they had no laws, they had nothing. Life started, new life started after genocide.
Can you talk a little bit about the work then that the widows decided to do? Because, you know, at that moment, the widows decided there's something we need to do very urgently for other widows. And maybe Chantal can also contribute here, because I know you were very concerned at that moment about trauma counseling and psychosocial support.
Je vais vous l'exprimer en français. Oui. La majorité des femmes, je veux dire génocide, ont souffert des problèmes traumatiques. Dans ce sens qu'ils ont détruit les membres de famille, les biens matériels.
So the majority of women who survived the genocide suffered very traumatic situation. They lost their family members as well as all their property.
Elles vivent dans l'isolement et les nombreuses personnes à reporter ces trous. Ils souffrent de la pauvreté. Certaines ont des enfants qui ne peuvent pas participer, continuer leurs études.
And so they suffered a great deal from isolation, as well as of course, they were completely destitute, really. And many of them had children who could not continue to go to school because of this situation.
L'encombre avant l'environnement même, l'entourage ne comprennent pas ce qui se passe chez ces femmes.
A lot of the people around them didn't understand what they were going through. The women themselves were going through.
Ils restaient dans cette situation problématique. Dans ce sens, ils ne pensent qu'à repasser. Ils ne pensent pas qu'à repasser. La mort de
Okay, so a lot of the women, in fact, were in sort of a trauma loop and kept reliving the events and could not overcome the trauma.
Et c'est après le génocide qu'au Rwanda, on a commencé à songer aux problèmes traumatiques.
So at that moment, we decided to engage with the question of trauma.
Et ce sont les initiatives de la société civile, de l'État, qu'on a commencé à les prendre en charge.
So civil society as well as the state got together and tried to figure out how to provide them with assistance.
L'instauration des universités dans le domaine de la santé mentale.
So there was actually some university courses set up at that time in Rwanda to train people in mental health.
La formation de base aux personnes qui peuvent venir en aide à ces personnes victimes des traumatismes.
And there was also, at the community level, training set up for peers to help other people with their trauma.
Dans l'initiative d'AVEGA, elle a formé aussi les personnes qu'on appelle des animateurs psychosociaux. Donc, ce sont des personnes qui donnent une aide de base dans la matière du traumatisme scolaire.
So, AVEGA did the same thing. They trained peer counselors at the community level so that they could begin the process of helping people at the community level. That was one of the main things AVEGA started to do.
Ces personnes s'aident mutuellement, donc elles s'aident entre elles, mais elles essaient aussi d'aider les autres. À part leur groupe vulnérable, des rêves de génocide, elles participent aussi aux problèmes traumatiques de toute la communauté rwandaise.
So the point of this was self-help, the help to other widows, but also actually extending trauma counseling to the rest of the community, which was also traumatized and did not to be widows.
Surtout pendant la période de la commémoration du Dé national, les veuves du génocide s'impliquent davantage, s'impliquent beaucoup plus par rapport aux autres qui travaillent comme professionnels, mais qui ne sentent pas le besoin comme ceux qui l'ont vécu.
So during the commemorations that they do every year for the genocide, the widows are particularly active in reaching out to the community. Probably, she says, because the widows themselves feel much more engaged in these events and have felt the trauma particularly acutely. Can you tell me, Odette, how did it begin? At the very, very beginning, how did that start? I mean, how did the widows first, did people know who had survived and who hadn't survived the genocide in the early days?
After the genocide, women who were based in Kigali, who survived in the Kigali city of Rwanda, they lived by miracle in the city, and really knowing that you can find another person who survived. And by miracle, some of them, like Chantal and Esperance and the others, they met accidentally in Kigali, and they were surprised. You survived. And slowly they met in a number of widows, and they started to think that there would be other widows who survived over the country. And then they sought to start an organization where where it can be a kind of voice of those widows, and also to bring the silence between those widows who survived. So it was at the end of 1994, and in the beginning of 1995, they started the organization recognized legally by the government of Rwanda.
Did you have any money at that time?
No, it was just commitment and determination of those women who survived. So the most pressing thing was expecting to be done was really to meet those who survived and maybe to say sorry for what happened, and also to encourage those who survived, and also to believe that loneliness among them, really it was a decision from the heart of everybody.
One of the things that I think I was involved in as I was reading your material was in advocating for the creation of a national fund for survivors, the FARC. What was the role of AVEGA in advocating for this? This is a fund that helps some of the survivors of the genocide, right? A government fund.
When after establishing the organization, which its mission was to restore hope for those survivors, widows and orphans and the other survivors, because we had also human who survived. And I would like also to tell you that AVEGA is not only for genocide widows, but also few men who lost their wives during the genocide also are a member of AVEGA. And now after the creation of AVEGA, AVEGA has objective which the main are to promote the welfare of survivors, widows and the orphans, to promote solidarity among those women, where AVEGA was like a family, a new family, where everybody sees in each other a relative, a man, a sister, a mother-in-law, a mother, a grandmother, and so on and so on. So, also to fight for equal justice, to carry out activities aiming to income-related activities, really to encourage women to work and to be part of the world development. Also to participate in the reconstruction of the country through peace building and unity and reconciliation process. And to achieve those goals, AVEGA set up programs, many programs in which it conducted activities. And the first program AVEGA started was the program of health. You can ask me why the program of health. Because the women could not go on, move on without really having treatment of different injuries they have on their bodies, different troubles, troubles in psychological problems they had. So AVEGA started by this program, where women who have been raped, now it was the role of AVEGA to encourage them to talk about what happened. And also to encourage them, saying that if that happened, but you still remain as a human, and we want to restore your dignity. We are treating you, we are giving you, are providing you treatment, medical treatment, and maybe we continue to move on.
The question I was curious about is the role you played in making sure there was a fund for the survivors. That was kind of your legal, political advocacy, right?
Yes, right, it is right. Yeah. And the program of justice, advocacy, and reformation, it is there where AVEGA made or played the role where by exposing or showing the problems, the pressing problems of survivors to the government or to other people internationally. And it is there where AVEGA influenced the government by setting up a fund, a national fund for survivors, but for vulnerable survivors only.
Yeah, which was a much smaller, vulnerable being extremely destitute.
Yes.
The fund did not meet the needs of the whole group of survivors.
Yeah. The fund was really like a drop in the sea.
Yeah. So that's why you have to continue doing your other activities. And we see a lot of the photos there that show the kind of work, 15 years later, how much progress has been made in the work of AVEGA. One of the things, and here I want to bring Akua into this discussion, is the role AVEGA played in connection with the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which is an international tribunal that was set up to try the perpetrators of the genocide. And there was a case in 1996 that was, it is very famous, the Agahozo case, which was brought against the mayor of one town in Rwanda who could have stopped the genocide in his town and didn't, and could have stopped the massive rape that was going on at the time of the genocide and didn't, and in fact stood by and in some respect encouraged the genocidaires to kill and to rape the women. In the first instance, when the first 12 counts were brought before the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, none of the counts included sexual violence and mass rape. And the women of Rwanda, including AVEGA, said that's unacceptable. Mass rape has to be one of the charges against Agahozo. Do you want to talk about this? You got involved with Profan, and then we'll ask Akua to comment on the role of women in these kinds of proceedings.
Thank you. After the creation of AVEGA, the board or the committee governing AVEGA took a commitment also to be member of women organizations, like Profan is a forum of women organizations, just to make a solidarity in defending the rights of women and their children, where by accusing Agahozo in the International Tribunal of Arusha, AVEGA encouraged women and we supported them to be able to testify at Arusha, where we supported them financially and also they have been accompanied by our lawyer there at Arusha to encourage them to be comfortable by when they testify.
And one of the results of that was, it was in 1998 that, in fact, first of all, the accusation of rape was added to the charges against Agahozo, but also in 1998, the tribunal declared that mass rape is a form of genocide, which was the first time in international criminal law that this happened. So AVEGA, when it accompanies the women to testify before these tribunals, helps them prepare, but also helps them deal with the trauma of telling their story again. So they work with them before the testimony and after the testimony, because it's quite traumatic. Akua, from your perspective, sitting on the International Criminal Court, what has been the impact of the decision like Agahozo on the jurisprudence of the International Criminal Court?
Yeah, first of all, we must be quite clear that on the panel that Judge Agahozo was the new judge, Pili, who is now the UN Human Rights Commissioner. She was a member of that panel. She's an alumni, a Gruber recipient, and a very passionate women's rights advocate. And so she played a major role in ensuring that the charge of rape was added at the time. And let me say that the international humanitarian law has always had some form of sexual violence on its documentation, but it was never taken seriously. But of course, after Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, and especially the decisions that were taken both in Rwanda and Yugoslavia, including Agahozo, the International Criminal Court statute, the Rome Statute, has now codified various forms of sexual violence, including rape, enforced slavery, forced marriages, and so on, as crimes against humanity and also war crimes. So we did play a major role, added to all the advocacy that had been done by women's groups to improve this. And the women's groups played a major role in crafting the Rome Statute and ensuring that sexual violence is part of crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes.
And from your perspective, why is it important, when we're looking at it at a broader level, to have women, survivors of crimes like this, women who have gone through it, suffered from conflict situations, part of post-conflict process? And when do you see this?
I think it's very important. Men and women experience conflict differently. As we all know, women's bodies have been used as instruments of war. Rape is an instrument of war. And women have suffered tremendously. It's not only now, but historically, if you go through all the conflicts, women have always suffered. And yet, when it comes to post-conflict reconstruction, it is women who take the front role. It is women who play the important role of mobilizing the society, ensuring the survival of the society. If it comes to agriculture, you see that they begin to cultivate the land to make sure that they are able to get food to feed their families. When you go into the informal sector, they are very innovative. They go into different businesses in order to be able to earn income to feed their family. They provide the health care for their families in all the communities that have been ravaged by war. If you go, you will see that this is what women do. And yet, when it comes to the formal negotiations, women are not always on the table. And therefore, you will realize that most of these treaties that are peace treaties don't work because they do not include the perspective of those who are responsible for the initial reconstruction of the communities that have been ravaged by war. So institutions like AVEGA demonstrate to us that it is important to include women in formal negotiations. AVEGA has, they could have just sat back, the widows could have sat back and just cried and say, look at us, we are pitiful, we don't have it. And yet they decided to empower themselves. They came together, they empowered themselves, they started programs and encouraged other people and got the government to do something about it. And I think that, and there are many organizations around the world in terms of where conflict has been devastated communities that are doing that, because women no longer want to sit back. They need their voices to be heard, and this is why it is important that when you're having formal negotiations, peace-building efforts, reconstruction efforts, women should be very, very much a part of it in order to ensure sustainability, because sustained peace cannot come if you exclude 50% of the population that have been affected.
And actually, yes, you're Chantal, right? Introduce yourself.
My name is Chantal, and I'm the founding member of AVEGA. I was the first vice president of AVEGA. So I would love to talk about something to add to what Odette explained so beautifully.
Can you speak a little louder because can you just speak closer to the microphone? Yeah, but
concerning the participation of AVEGA in the creation of the fund for education for orphans, AVEGA collaborated with other survivors organizations. One of them is IBUCA. It's called IBUCA means remember. It's another organization that is really have been working very hard and advocating for survivors. And it's with that collaboration with other organizations that AVEGA was able to convince the government to set up that fund that have been there for orphans so they can go to school. And as Odette said, it was a drop in the ocean. Even now, there are kids who still need help. And that's why the work of AVEGA and other survival organizations is still important. Also, concerning why we started meeting in the beginning, I think we didn't even plan to meet because we found ourselves in Rwanda. We lost our husband, we lost our families, we lost our parents, we lost our friends. And if you met with someone you knew before the genocide, it was really a miracle. And we, like Esperance and Christine, people who met at that time, we would meet someone and say, okay, let's get together. And the first month, it's just around maybe the end of '94. It was just let's talk. about our stories. We didn't plan that. We felt like at least there's someone I know. I feel like I'm no longer alone. And by meeting slowly, we didn't even have any place to meet. We met under trees and met on the street, and just by mouth, women would come. And after a few weeks, because 100 women meeting every week, with no plan really, just talking. And after meeting for a few months, in a few weeks, we said we can create an organization, and that's how it started.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Linda Bash with the National Council for Research on Women, and I just want to thank you all. I mean, this is so moving, your work, and thank you for coming here. Thank you for all the work you've done, and thank you to the Gruber Foundation for bringing this to our attention, because I think it's so important for us to know about this. I just had the opportunity to go to the Clinton Global Initiative, and your president was speaking there and was quite active in conversation. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the impact that you're able to have on reconstruction efforts today, on a larger, maybe on a larger scale in Rwanda. That would be very helpful, because I think to the point that you made, that women so often are left out of the peace building reconstruction efforts, and their voices are very important. Certainly in terms of the misery, the trauma that's been suffered, but also in terms of visions for the country going forward. Thank you.
So how is AVEGA involved in reconstruction today, and in the bigger planning for the new Rwanda?
AVEGA is committed to participating in the construction of the country. Even the country belongs to everybody, to every Rwandan. So we are called to also participate in the construction of the country, where AVEGA is helping encouraging women in fighting poverty, in through income-generating activities or livelihoods, where they work for their own development and help their own families, and also women. We encourage women to participate in decision making, where many are representing others in different organs, like in district council, in parliament, in different structures of women, where we want to raise our voice in different organs. And also in health, we help in protection of our women against disease like HIV/AIDS, and also protect youth regarding trauma, regarding AIDS, because we need them for the future of Rwanda. Also, we help our young survivors and prepare them for the future of our country. Because we as widows, we are getting old, but we are doing our examples for our children, and now to make them strong and to be able to participate in the construction of the country.
Well, then one question was about, involving yourself in formal structures. I think that was the sense of your question. So, what are, you said some local councils, community councils. Do you have members in parliament? They have members in parliament?
Yes, we among the 56% of the women in the parliament, we have maybe five widows in the parliament as members of parliament.
I think the important thing and the impact of groups like AVEGA in Rwanda is that currently Rwandan parliament has the highest number of women. At least if they've done nothing at all, they have managed to convince the population that you need women in positions like parliament, in positions like district councils, local councils, to be able to take decisions that will have positive impact on the development of the nation. And I think that is really, really an important lesson to be learned.
But that started with an official quota for women in parliament, didn't it? There was at first a quota for women in parliament, no? That the government decided there would be a percentage of seats reserved for women in parliament, no? Is that, am I correct? Right.
Yeah, but that was a result of the lobbying that the women's groups had done. Because in the past, you would have only men being sponsored to go into parliament. But they had done enough to impact the thinking of government that we must have a certain minimum of women in parliament.
And now you've exceeded that minimum.
Yes, of course.
It's not only in parliament, she says in all other areas. At the district level, there's a lot of women involved in the council. So in fact, those are very involved in decision-making bodies at all levels in Rwanda. It's really remarkable. There's a lot of noise up here.
How do you build consensus politically in a country which has been so divided by such difficult and traumatic situations? How do you take the people who perpetrated the trauma on the other part of society and the traumatized and bind them together into a political unity again?
Really, in the beginning, it was very, very difficult because of trauma, and it was a process to understand for survivors to understand what happened and what to be done in the future. Then, as I said, women have been prepared step by step by helping them overcome the trauma, understanding the situation, what happened in the genocide, the meaning of what happened, and slowly, by through trainings on trauma, through trainings on the rights, women's rights, children's rights, and through a process of education, we took a decision now to build same country, not to correct the same mistake by another mistake, by also killing, but we educated our members of AVEGA and the survivors needed to understand and to make a commitment for the future. It is there, step by step, we have been strong to accept the situation and to go forward.
Then you do commemoration work, and you also do conflict resolution type of workshops with young people, right? Do you want to talk about that? How that may help answer?
Yeah, through those trainings we conduct, we invite especially young people to help them move on and in a safe movie. And we have the discussions with women and young people, and really we convince them through those discussions and training, and show them where they are going. And it is there, they changed completely, and they decided to build the country, even there are many problems of trauma, of loss of their families, but through counseling, regular counseling, we move on. We move on. And also, we train our beneficiaries to be on basic laws, where they also they help the fellow widows and the orphans, the community, to help them understand their rights and defend their own rights in the community. For example, the rights regarding property and the inheritance, they know that, and they know where to go to claim for their rights. And sometimes those people, those women who have been trained, sometimes they orient where to go and find an answer of the problem. And also, they accompany sometimes because the widow or orphan does not know where to go. So in the community we have a moving of support of different category of people in the community where everybody feel comfortable because they are supported by each other, by fellow widows.
Do you help only Tutsis or do you help everyone?
We help in AVEGA because with our objective to rebuild the country strongly in terms of unity and reconciliation. We help everybody who needs that support in terms of legal support or in terms of trauma counseling. We help everybody who needs that. Because we can't build on the past, but we want to build a best country for the future.
Yeah, the gentleman in the front and then we'll go with you.
Two questions. First, how do you overcome trauma? And the second question is, as you think about how you overcome trauma, what is the role of formal law, courts, prosecution, and what's the role of informal law and community mechanisms? How do you think about the law and overcoming trauma?
Okay, so maybe we can ask Chantal to speak about what do you do to overcome trauma. Qu'est-ce que vous faites en pratique pour aider les gens à surmonter le traumatisme qu'ils ont vécu?
Nous avons tout d'abord créé des espaces de parole où on rencontre les femmes, les personnes victimes du traumatisme et ils tentent d'essayer de s'exprimer, d'exprimer et explorer les problèmes. Et puis, nous avons essayé de former les personnes, les animateurs psychosociaux sont des personnes qui reçoivent une information, des formations de base et qui dispensent des counseling individuels aux personnes traumatisées. Il y a aussi la formation des counselors, des professionnels en traumatisme et qui donnent le counseling individuel et le counseling de groupe.
So they started first by creating what they call speaking spaces, community speaking spaces, where the women can get together in groups to start discussing their problems and telling their story. Then after that, the next thing they did was to train peer facilitators who are trained at the community level. These are lay facilitators who can do some peer counseling in groups and individually. And then there was the training of professionals and the real professional cadres who can also give individual and group counseling.
Nous avons essayé de casser les cancers au niveau des districts, où les animateurs psychosociaux, les personnes là qui ont les 6 formations de base, pour le transfert, pour que ces conseillers puissent résoudre les problèmes que les APS ne peuvent pas résoudre.
So, and they placed a lot of these structures at the district level so that if the problems are not able to be resolved at the community level, then they can be brought up to the next level for more specialized assistance to the individual in question.
Et je crois que la question que je voulais vous poser, c'était plutôt
Et en pratique, comment est-ce qu'on peut surmonter un traumatisme comme celui-là? C'est quand même un traumatisme, it's a huge trauma we're talking about. Et comment est-ce qu'on fait pour survivre à ça? Est-ce qu'on peut vraiment faire pour aider les gens? Ou est-ce qu'ils survivent eux-mêmes finalement, ils s'aident eux-mêmes?
Oui, nous avons adopté un travail holistique. Il y a 4 départements. Le département psychosocial, le département des opérations socio-économiques et le département médical. Ces 4 départements se complètent mutuellement. Si la personne, par exemple, souffre des séquelles physiques, peut-être des causes après là, le service médical entretient les problèmes médicaux, les problèmes de la santé. Le département des opérations économiques cherche par exemple les projets générateurs de revenus et cherche de petits moyens qu'on donne à ces personnes victimes, l'assistance sociale. Et puis le service de counseling donne le counseling, la thérapie. Ce système de travail holistique, de travail en synergie, permet que la personne victime et la personne qui souffre du traumatisme en même puisse en sortir de cet état. Et puis,
so basically the approach is a sort of holistic approach. They do psychosocial support, they do also socioeconomic support because poverty is a real issue, as well as medical care. So people face multiple problems, obviously, and if somebody has, lost a limb, you need to help them with that. If they need income generation support, they need that as well as the counseling proper. Basically, they do all of it around the person so that hopefully the person can start to feel better and emerge from that.
Et puis nous avons essayé de focaliser à la sensibilisation de la communauté, conscientisation de la communauté aux problèmes traumatiques. Nous faisons de sorte que toute la communauté comprenne que les personnes victimes du traumatisme, il y a le pourquoi. La personne souffre parce qu'il a rencontré des événements atroces. Si la communauté comprenne l'existence du problème, la communauté aussi participe à la compréhension de la personne.
So they also do sensitization of the entire community so that the community understands what people have gone through, the extreme suffering and the horrors that they've witnessed, and are able to help in their own way in supporting the person's own healing process.
Et nous insistons à ce que tout le monde comprenne que ces personnes souffrent parce qu'il y a des causes et que tout le monde participe à la réhabilitation de la personne.
So it's really a community engagement in the rehabilitation of those who have suffered trauma. And now the second question, which is about...
For the first question, I would like to add something. It is not only AVEGA who is doing that, but the entire community, the government put in place a lot of measures in that regard, where during commemoration, survivors are helped by the entire community, and everybody is concerned.
The second question is the role of legal proceedings, in helping with healing. I mean, women have gone to court. There's been the process, the gachacha process, which is a big process of traditional courts that was set up in the early 2000s, trying to deal with some of the questions of culpability and guilt. And how has this helped women feel better going through the gachacha, or what's the outcome of all that? There have been thousands of cases.
In the beginning, it was hard to understand how to treat or to judge genocide in the local court. But through discussion, and we tried to convince women, because there were many perpetrators in prison, and really it would ask Rwanda to judge about 200 years to judge those people. So for that reason, it would, in 200 years, it could not be a survivor in life. Yeah. So to convince them, to show them that it is an opportunity to say or to express what we have seen or we have heard, and also to be comfortable with you in your heart that you have contributed as you can when you were in life. So we took a time to discuss with the survivors about that issue, and then they have understood and they have committed to participate in the judgment in the whole process of those local courts. And really, those courts have reached the success as you have followed through media or what, where we have understood where we want to go.
So the women were encouraged by AVEGA to testify about their. But that can also be very difficult to relive. To tell your story again in public must be traumatic.
Yes, but we have put in place measures to help those people, like volunteers in trauma or psychologists in place to accompany them in the judgment or during the testimony of in those courts. Also, we encouraged women to accompany, even they are not counselors, but also when you see other people behind you, you feel comfortable, you are confident to say what you want to say. So we created that program among our beneficiaries to help each other and to accompany in everywhere there is a judgment in those courts.
Are you comfortable with the outcomes?
Yeah. Did it work? And the courts, did they produce results that satisfied
yes,
the women?
because they helped somehow in the process of negotiation, because we had to know how they killed our relatives, how they have put our relatives, and we have been able to bury them in dignity. And it is the most important thing we did for our relatives, our husbands and children, when we found the remains of the body and we buried them in dignity. And then it is the start of our decreasing of trauma. When someone found the remains of the bodies and we buried him, we said, oh, I'm really comfortable that I found my husband and now I buried him in dignity.
And Odette, a lot of that information came through those testimonies in court where the people's remains were.
Yes. It helped us to know the truth about the genocide, how it was planned, who were actors, the main actors in the planning of genocide, and so on.
Good morning. I'm Anissa Vanki. I sit on the board of directors of an organization called Abraham's Path, and we're involved in cross-boundary conflict transformation. And my question I'd like to address to Your Honor, what preconditions, if any, need to be in place for work like this to take hold and be successful? I think I heard so often the words after the genocide, and I don't know if that means there has to be peace first. I worry about the people of, even though it's not genocide, the people of Afghanistan, of Iraq, of now Libya and Syria and Palestine and Darfur, who are not in a place of after the war yet. So what preconditions need to exist before this kind of work can succeed?
It's not a very easy question to understand, to answer. There has been, especially since the advent of the International Criminal Court, and the work that it's doing mostly in Africa, there has been a fierce debate between peace versus justice. There are many who have argued that we need peace before justice. But my position, and I think the position of most people, is that peace and justice are not mutually exclusive. You need both in order to achieve sustainable peace and development. What justice does, and I think it has been demonstrated here very clearly, is that we create through the justice process, whether it's at the local level or at the international level. In Rwanda, you had both the Gacaca and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. You create a record of how this came about, who is responsible. You punish some of those. Obviously, you probably cannot punish everybody, but you punish some of those who were responsible for it. That way, you stop collective guilt. You stop this process of a group of people being perpetually, collectively guilty of something. You create a record of who was responsible, how it came about. First, just for future generations. Secondly, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes that brought them about. Now, having said that, both can go hand in hand. You can have the process of reconciliation and peace as well as justice. For example, in Sierra Leone, where there was a massive atrocities committed, 10-month-old babies had their arms chopped off in this conflict. Babies who had nothing to do with anything. They chose the path of both reconciliation and justice. A special court for Sierra Leone was set up to try those with the highest responsibility for the offenses that occurred. There was also a peace and reconciliation panel set up so that people will tell their story. Through these two processes, we have a historical record of how the Civil War came about, who was responsible for it. Some of them have been punished. Obviously, it's not everyone who has been punished, but those with the highest responsibility have been punished. You stop this process of collective guilt where a whole generation will grow up thinking it is these people who were responsible for it, and then you perpetuate this violence from generation to generation. And you are able to have some closure, which I think has been demonstrated here. Yes, law and the effect of this justice program may not be able to be seen in the short term, but in the long term, it does bring some closure to the individuals involved, and it helps the nations to move on. And yes, it was because of the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Cambodia, and so on that the International Criminal Court was set up, because it was felt that if after the event you set up the tribunal, first of all, it's extremely expensive. Some of the memories would have gone, people would have died, some of the record would be missing. But if there is a permanent court in place which can deal, and unfortunately what the ICC now is dealing with, all the cases we are dealing with are in the middle of conflicts. Every case before the ICC is in a conflict area. It isn't that safe, the conflict. But at least the message is out there that if you continue to do this, there is an institution in place that can take action. And hopefully, in the long term, that would stop a lot of. And even now, in northern Uganda, where the Lord's Resistance Army was really had devastated the whole of northern Uganda and displaced huge numbers of people. As soon as indictments were issued against the leaders of the group, they moved out. Now northern Uganda is gradually coming back to. People have gone back, they've started their lives. The International Criminal Court has a trust fund for victims, which tries to help victims get back their lives together, and they are engaged in programs, small micro programs to help individuals within the community begin their life, economic programs, trauma counseling, all the things that have been done in Rwanda are being done in order to rebuild the society, so that even if the leaders are still in the jungles between Congo, Sudan, and the Great Lakes, the impact of those indictments have been very clear. First of all, it drove them to the peace table, but Kony insisted that unless the warrants were withdrawn, he wasn't going to sign it. But he has not gone back into Uganda. And he's wreaking havoc from time to time in the jungles of Sudan, Congo, and so on. But I think he knows that his time is limited. He knows that one day, because the indictments have no expiry date. So the impact of law is not always easy to see in the short term, but in the long term. And my position is that peace and justice go together. They are not mutually exclusive. We can pursue programs for peace, reconstruction, at the same time as we pursue programs for justice, to bring those who have the highest responsibility for instigating, planning these crimes to justice.
Thank you. I'm Sakiko Fukuda-Parr. I'm a professor at the Law School here, and I was a member of the advisory committee. I have a comment and a question. The comment is simply to say that it's wonderful to be here, and to explain to you also that in making the selection for the award, I think that what really motivated many of us was to see a group that really exemplified women not as victims but as agents for taking things forward. My question is, now it is 17 years after the genocide, so you have a whole new generation of young people who have grown up not having experience and who have no memory of it, personal memory. So what does that mean for the country and for an organization like yours? What do you discuss in terms of any changing priorities that you may have in your program? That your priorities in 1995 must have been very different from your priorities today. So, internally, when you are chatting about your priorities, what are the things that you're considering about shifting to pay attention more to the new generations?
Thank you for your question. We are planning really for the future of those young people, as the future belongs to them. And we, through education, when we encourage them to continue to do their studies in secondary school, they are helped by the government through the fund called FADGE, set up by the government. Also, for those who get the maximum, the marks required for university, they are helped. But because of the difficulties, they are living the whole day life. Really, they don't get enough marks. This is why we have a big number of children who are staying at home after completing the secondary school, where now they are stuck. They don't get a job because their studies don't allow them to get job, and also they can't go to university because they are not eligible for the marks they have already required by the government, because also limited funds they have available for university studies. So for us, we continue to encourage them and potential donation where we support a few number of children who continue to do their studies in university. Also, we encourage others to go for professional studies, vocational training, and then after that they go for work and they can find jobs. But it remains a big challenge we have actually.
And what about the question of the fact that these young people don't know about the genocide? They didn't live, they were too young, or they were born. So how do you engage in that conversation about memory so that it's not forgotten and it's understood?
Commemoration, genocide, in terms of not forget what happened in the past, but we can't stay in the past. We want to continue to live better and find a better way for the future. But those children who are born or were born after genocide or during genocide, it is a big problem for them to understand it, and it is those who are very, very affected by the trauma, and we continue to help them through those sessions of individual counseling and group counseling. And also we emphasize on that approach of community approach where we help each other in our families.
My name is Martha Diaz. I'm the director of the Hip Hop Education Center at NYU. As someone who believes in the power of hip hop to heal, to empower young people, what is the role of the arts? Talk about that.
The role of the arts.
The role of the arts.
Music, visual arts in your work. And you role.
Il y a différentes approches positives. Il y a art thérapie, musique thérapie. Nous avons le social d'encadrement. Donc, nous cherchons à apprendre les différentes approches pour pouvoir faire des aides complémentaires.
Et ça, c'est pour le counseling, mais est-ce que vous utilisez aussi des arts dans votre travail avec le public ou pour conscientiser les gens de façon différente, pas seulement dans le cadre de la thérapie?
Donc, les espaces-là aux paroles, là où on donne beaucoup de ces gens pour s'exprimer, quelquefois on s'exprime en travaillant, c'est ça quelque chose.
So from what I understand, the main way in which art and music and so on come in is through the therapy. So they use art therapy, music therapy, and in group sessions they use the visual arts for people to express what they've gone through. That's the main way it's used with AVEGA.
Well, should definitely be used as a medium to engage.
You can come and talk to them afterwards and suggest hip hop.
Thank you. My name is Esperance and I'm co-founder of AVEGA. Just like to add what Odette said and to answer your question regarding how to prepare now our young generation. That time they were young when genocide happened. So now what we are trying to, as we live here in America, Chantal, Christine and I, now we are focusing more on orphans of genocide who are less fortunate, not because the one thing we really need to make sure is to meet their basic needs. Because once those basic needs are not met, it's really hard to move on. So besides the assistance support they have from the fund to pay their school fees, we make sure they have their needs met, like the transport fees, the school supplies. Some of them, they live by themselves. They need someone to support them. You can't set a child to school when doesn't have anything to put on the table, when doesn't have somewhere to sleep. So we have to make sure it's not really, we are trying, we are on the right direction, but at least we have to make sure we are focusing on those needs. So we have a non-profit organization here, the name is called Forges, is a friend of Rwanda survivors of genocide. So our main focus, and we work with AVEGA, so is to advocate, to speak out for those orphans of genocide who are in school, who needs more support to go ahead and to be their support, train them there, not just to send them money, just to make sure they know someone cares, because it's a very important thing too, especially when they are in that age. For those who have teenagers, you know what it means. Besides what they went through, being a teenager is another thing. So we have to make sure, because when we see them, we start, it's easy to raise a child when it's young, anybody can raise a young child, but when it comes to teenager, that's how they are. It's very hard for them. Sometimes the society doesn't understand them. You feel like they're acting with all their bad children. They are not. So now that's how we work with AVEGA, through the social worker, to raise money, to look for sponsors to support those children, not for school fees, but just to meet the basic needs. I remember when we went back to Rwanda, it's going to be 2 years ago, we met those children. The other thing we do too is to make sure they get together at least once. You know, like Christmas time is a important thing in most of people. So at least they don't have their families. To get them together, to raise money, to bring them to some places, not really nice but nice, where we can give them a retreat. They talk together, now they have a network together, so they know. They don't feel like, oh, I feel myself, I lost all my parents, my siblings. That they know, like, next house, hey, someone read the same thing. And they start to think like, no, I am not alone. Not only that, we teach them how, we try to explain, nobody can really explain what happened. Nobody. But we try at least to say, let's try to overcome our past by doing the right thing, by telling them we care, we look at all the things, and they have each other. So now they are like families. And I remember when we went there, they were giving us testimonies how now before they go to school, they felt like they are not normal because they didn't have nice clothes, they didn't have hygienic items, so they have to isolate even they were in school. But today they go to school on time. They have a nice clothes. They don't have many, but at least they have one. They can feel like they are now like other children. That was the support story, but was to be how now we are trying. We don't reach many, but that's now our focus, and it's under education, but we have to make sure their basic needs.
Thank you. So, is that the last question, or can I just wrap the panel up first? Let me wrap up the panel first. So I want to thank our panelists today, Odette, Chantal, and Akua. Get together with nothing, meeting first on the side of the road, and then 15 years later have built an institution and an organization that is such a source of support and hope, and that is active on so many fronts, including in seeking justice, not only peace, as we heard. So I'm very impressed and I'm very inspired as I leave this today, and I'm grateful to have had the chance to lead this conversation with you this morning. Patricia, now the closing words.
to the Women's Rights Prize. I would like to conclude with a final congratulations to our recipient, AVEGA Agahozo. And for those who don't know, AVEGA is an acronym for the phrase Association of Widows of the Genocide. In French, and Agahozo is Kenya Rwandan for Dry One's Tears. We at the Gruber Foundation hope that receiving the 2011 Prize for Women's Rights will allow AVEGA to continue doing what their name suggests. So we thank you for this tremendous work. And one more final word. We would like to acknowledge those who have made today possible. I want to thank all of the participants today, Dean Post, Françoise, Girard, and all of the advisors to the Women's Rights Prize, past and present. I see many of them here. And of course, Chantal, Kabasinga, and Odette, Kayirere from AVEGA. As you know, two of our participants, Pinar Ilkarajan and Sakina Yakubi, are also women's rights laureates. I'd like to acknowledge also Nancy Northrup, who is president of the Center for Reproductive Rights, co-recipient of the prize last year. I would also like to acknowledge Professor Reva Siegel, who will chair the Women's Rights Program at Yale going forward. We are honored to have two founding members of AVEGA joining us, who we heard from in the audience today, Esperance Umwabaye and Chantal Kayitisi. So thank you for participating and being here today. I also want to acknowledge three men in the room who have served as trustees to the Gruber Foundation for many years: Daniel McSwiggan, Neil Pryor, and Mary Partridge. We've relied on each of them for good counsel and advice over many years, and we are most grateful for their support. Waring, additionally, being a Yale graduate of the Yale Law School, also participated in an invaluable role in brokering and facilitating our agreement with the foundation and Yale. And I want to thank him for that, and also Vice President of Development, Inga Reichenbach, for her diligence, for expertise, and all the many things that you have done to facilitate this agreement. Taylor Krause, Voices of Rwanda, has generously provided the video clip of the moving interview that we saw earlier. And we would like to thank the First Lady of the Virgin Islands for coming. Cecile DeYoung has also founded the Rwanda Project, U.S. Virgin Islands. It's a 501c3, and it's raising funds for high school students in the Virgin Islands to go to Rwanda, where they can complete community service projects. They also actually sell some of the Rwandan handicrafts that are here today, some beadwork and other jewelry. Who is also here is Jeannie Rediker of WNET. And as you may know, we started with Rwanda and we're ending with Rwanda. Our first prize went to Nabakile and Profound Twesi Conway. You heard Judge Kuenyehia refer to her crucial role in declaring rape as a war crime on behalf of the tribunal, which made possible so many advances in women's rights. And at that very first prize was Jeannie Rediker, who saw what was going on in Rwanda and went there and made a movie called Ladies First, which is about the enormous number of women in parliament in Rwanda. Jeannie is also working on a terrifically powerful project right now, which will be at Yale in a couple of weeks. And it's a PBS series, a 5-part series, that's going to be aired on October the 11th at 10 o'clock. It's called Women, War, and Peace. It's a very dynamic presentation, really echoing some of the themes you've heard here today about women as peace builders, not victims. Women who are vital to reconstruction in post-conflict situations, as well as vital voices in societies. So one of the segments is also devoted to a previous women's rights laureate, Lema Bowie. Many of you have seen Pray the Devil Back to Hell. That will be a part of this 5-part series. So we thank you also for your enormous work. And finally, I wish to thank the hardworking staff of the Gruber Foundation, Deb Wadsworth and Bernita Aiken of our St. Thomas office, Philip Front, our man on the scene. We've seen him walking around with the microphone. And most especially, the woman who is responsible for pulling everything together, always with grace and perfection, Sarah Rea. Thank you, Sarah. And if I have overlooked anyone, please pardon me. We have here with us today Peter's 2 children, Vicky Gruber and Ron Gruber, who are sitting at this table over here. We have Grubers with us. And we thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you.